So one question I have, and I don't know if there's a scenario that comes to mind or a kind of a common situation where there's a mistake or something that, wow, when you're planning for transition, make sure you don't do this, or this is going to lead to something that's not going to go very well. Can you talk a little bit about a mistake or an error that IEP team leaders and teams should avoid?
So I think there's a few different things. So my answer might be a little bit long. I think not going in with a collaborative mindset is going to set the transition planning process off from the beginning. We really need the student's voice. That's what drives the IEP and the TPF. So if we don't have that mindset going into the meeting, it's really not going to be that effective. We can set up a great plan for a student and everything that they're going to do. If the student isn't there to chime in and say, there's no way I'm taking that elective, which is their right, then we're just going to really hold up the transition planning process. So if we don't have the student's voice, and again, that's going to vary depending on the student's disability, what their level of need is, but all students can express some kind of preference, interest, what they like, what they don't like. If we don't have that, we're starting off in a really bad place. We also want to make sure that we're, as I said before, open to those conversations, hearing from the family, what are your concerns? Team leaders, though, also need to recognize everyone has a role in transition planning. So if a family is bringing up a concern, it doesn't necessarily mean that the school has to resolve that issue or address that concern. It might be, you know what, we're going to put you in touch with the local Center for Independent Living because that's going to be a really good resource for your family. Or you have questions about Social Security benefits. We're going to put you in touch with someone from Beneplan is out near me.
Yep.
You know, someone that can provide information around benefits planning. So we don't necessarily always have to have the answer because no one is an expert in everything, but we need to have the conversation so we can put the parent and the family in touch with the right people to answer some of those questions. I think these transition conversations can be a little anxiety provoking for some teams because they feel like, how are we going to do all of this? But that's where having that collaborative approach going into the meeting. Who are my other champions at Mass Rehab, at the Department of Developmental Services, at the Department of Mental Health? Who can I pull from? What are the things that I can put the student in touch with? And that's really going to make the transition planning process more effective. If we're thinking about transportation, are there travel training resources that we can put the student in touch with? Is the student going to access paratransit? Are they interested in obtaining their driver's license or permit? We're not going necessarily to go get the permit with the student, but maybe the student has a reading disability, and some of the time that they're meeting with their reading specialist, could they review some of the content, language, vocabulary that's now in the driver's permit book instead of focusing on a textbook? So those are the conversations. If you come in with a holistic and collaborative approach, you're going to be able to naturally lead that discussion as part of the IEP meeting. And if you don't have that, then other people are going to be hesitant to think creatively and think outside the box, because that's really what transition is. So I think some of the ways to make sure that we're doing that is to, again, help prepare the student to be part of that meeting. So we want to make sure that we're saying to the student, okay, this is what the meeting's going to look like. I'm going to ask you what you want to do after high school. If you think about it, if you've never asked a student what they want to do after high school, and they come to their first IEP meeting and you just look at them and say, so what do you want to do after graduation? Some students are going to be able to answer that. Others might be terrified and be really nervous about their answer. Maybe it's something they have an idea that they haven't talked to their parents about, and they're nervous about now sharing that information with their parent. We all know that what students are like at home is often different than at school. So we want to do the preparation, make sure the student knows, here's your role. This is the information that I'm looking for. Same thing with the parents and the team, other team members. A lot of times other team members might have contacts outside of what they typically do every day that might help facilitate transition. So it might be, if we're talking about employment, the science teacher actually knows someone that's a business owner downtown who could do an informational interview with the student. So again, it's really looking to your whole team for information, looking to guidance and counseling. A lot of times there's really great programs like internship programs that are through guidance that we might not necessarily think of for our students, because sometimes we can get a little closed in, has to say special education because it's for a special ed student. It doesn't. Take advantage of all the resources that are available in your community and in your school to help be part of that transition planning process. So again, I really think going in with that holistic view, doing some preparation, making sure that you're touching base with people ahead of time. If you know that there's a topic that the parents have specific concerns about, doing a little bit of research or reaching out to a partner ahead of time is really helpful. So it might be, we haven't done a referral to mass rehab yet because the student's 14. Typically we do those referrals 2 years before the student ages out. But if you say, you know, these are some of the examples of things that have happened around age 16 or 17 for our other students, when we get to that point, you know, those are some resources that we can access. For now, here's how we're going to address the interest. Maybe it's job shadowing in the school or in the community, something like that. So I think oftentimes if you're doing a little work ahead of time, especially if you know there's a specific concern, it's going to make the whole process run a little bit more smoothly.